So let's get started. I'm really excited for this first panel session. We're going to talk about what's next for the ADRF, and I'm going to have each panelist introduce themselves. I'll go ahead and start. My name is Baron Rodriguez. I'm the Executive Director of the Data Integration Support Center. We partner with the College Center as states are starting to move and look at the MOU processes, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit, but I'm really excited to be here. I'm also the Vice President of Information Technology at WestEd, which is a research nonprofit, and we oversee a lot of infrastructure there as well, and so I kind of bring that knowledge to the conversation. So I'm going to go ahead and start with our esteemed partner down at the end. If you would introduce yourself and your role with ADRF.
Good morning. I am Robert Magoo. I'm the Chief Data Officer for the state of Arkansas. We're in the middle of a big sort of data-driven digital transformation, and the ADRF is a critical part of that strategy.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Brent Hewith, and I'm with the Economic Research Service at USDA. I'm a branch chief there at the branch chief level and manage a team of about 15 economists and statisticians and social scientists. And we use ADRF as an enclave for hosting our some of the data we produce, and as a place where we trying to build data community and collaboration with external researchers at universities and other places that use our data.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Rich Ferguson. I'm the Chief Technical Officer for Coolridge. I've been here about 4 months, so everything that's good with the ADRF is mine. Everything that's bad was the previous person, so thank you.
And we're going to dive right in. Since it's 9 o'clock, I'm going to check out how awake all of you are. We're going to go right into some of the latest enhancements. So we're going to start with Rich. Rich, could you just describe some of the latest enhancements, number of participating entities, tools, et cetera, just so people get an idea of where Coolridge is at right now?
Absolutely, I'd love to. I actually have a slide. Okay, so we are, I don't know if this, there it is, look at that. Isn't that amazing how technology works? Okay. I'm going to talk about a couple of things that we're doing in the future of the ADRF. So some of you, in the previous session, when we said how many people are actually using the ADRF, it surprised me how many people aren't and how many people here are new. So I was thinking, do they even know what ADRF means? Like, what is it? So the technology of the ADRF is really unique. It's very revolutionary. And there's a guy named Burjesh, I don't know if he's in the room, he's the one that created it. So we've got to give him some credit because what he's done is pretty amazing. He's been able to give your CISOs and your CIOs some confidence in compliance because security is a big deal. It's something you don't think about, it's just there. And without the ADRF, we're really taking the compliance to a new level. So we are FedRAMPed, which is unheard of for a research facility to have that. It allows you to access your data remotely from pretty much anywhere, and then also do research in a secure way in the 5 safes that we've kind of talked about almost in every session. Okay, so that's great. We have tools within the ADRF that allow you to do research. We're working on those tools. Of course, my nice Sonoma County there. We're working on those tools to make it better for your researchers and people who are in the ADRF to do work. And then we've got some future technologies. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that. I know it's so exciting for those people who are not technical. But so what is a management portal? Some of you, and I know some of the people in the room have used our first version of management portal. That was the first attempt to kind of get data in like really close to the ADRF without devalidating our FedRAMP certification and use a tool to help you do things, like little things, like with the user experience. Now that we've done that, we know it's there. We also know that the FedRAMP people are good with us doing this. We have to talk to them before we do anything in the ADRF. We're doing a next version of it. We haven't named it. We're going to do a naming competition before our retreat we have in May in Dallas. So we're going to send out invites to everybody. We're going to give you some names and we're going to name this thing. You're going to help us because we want evangelism in the ADRF. So we're going to name the Management Portal 2 to something cool. And what it's going to do is it's going to provide 4 things. Okay, it's going to provide end-to-end entitlements tracking so that you as a user come in for a contract. From the minute you touch Coolridge, you're going to be handed almost like TurboTax style all the way through to onboarding and then even research and then exporting. That's the whole plan. And I feel like I'm really confident about that one piece. The second piece is we want to improve the user experience. It's good, and it's better. I had somebody in the last session say it's way better than it was, and it's way better than anything that the current local and federal government has used. But we really want to make it a wow experience, and that's something we're working on. We have hired people to come in to help us with that UI look and feel. So sorry, this thing keeps going. So we really want to make the user experience amazing. I mean, we need your input. We want to evangelize this community. I mean, you can see that we're all here. We enjoy, everybody enjoys each other. It's a unique group. When I try to explain what we do in the elevator to people, it's very hard, but you guys all get it. So we're like in a support group here. We need evangelism. And then the third bucket is we really, really want to improve, and it's in here, to move to a FedRAMP high. All that does is, it doesn't negate the FedRAMP where we're at now, which is moderate. It protects your data, protects the people, like make sure all the 5 safes are there. Going to high allows us another opportunity. Doesn't mean you can't operate in the medium. We'll have a high because we want to do linkages to data that we know will be beneficial to democratizing things and making for underserviced communities and people like veterans, who I'm a veteran, and they have, understand what their data is. We currently don't have that linkage. We have to move to the next level to get that data, so we're doing that. That is a big, big, very expensive, hard initiative, but I feel confident in doing it. And then third is the big, everybody talks AI. I feel like it's the buzzword of the day, but AI is revolutionary. It is changing our life, and we're right on the beginning of. Do you remember when the internet? I mean, there's plenty of people here who remember when the internet came around. No one really knew what an @ symbol was. That's kind of now we're like everybody's @ and hash, and we're there now with AI. We're right on the precipice of doing some stuff that's unbelievable. We want to lead in that for the federal government. There is a thing. I'm going to put this out. There is a thing with the federal government right now in FedRAMP. They're saying AI is great, but be very careful. And I won't say a moratorium, but they're making the provisions of doing AI in any FedRAMP product very, very constrained. We want to be the first. We have access to the people who made this policy. We want to be the first to actually implement it and do it in a way. Here's the AI in 2 ways. Help do exporting in triage so that it's easier for you to export for PHI, PII, so that we make sure that AI can do that really well, probably better than a human. And second, help the researcher with their own research, asking questions in the trained model with inside the ADRF that's encapsulated, cannot leave, but you can export your AI results into your export package. That's kind of the plan. I feel really confident about that as well. And there's a great timeline there if you want to see when all that's happening. Don't hold me to it. We're going to do it. I'm watching my boss right now who's grimacing. Any questions for me on the future technology and what's up with what was the title? What's next with the ADRF? No questions?
We have time for questions.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah,
thank you, Mr. Moderator.
No, we will we'll totally get to questions. We want those, but we're going to transition a little bit to some specific roles that we have as fellow panelists here. We're going to start with our esteemed Chief Data Officer from Arkansas. He's like, next. So could you talk a little bit about your specific engagement with the ADRF, how long you've been involved, and then what are some specific projects that you've worked on through the ADRF?
Sure, and we first started getting into the ADRF as users in spring 2020 at the Ohio class, and then the first ETA unemployment to reemployment class, and several others. Thank you all for teaching us and hosting us and providing your data so we can learn. We started putting our own data into the ADRF in 2022, starting with a work-based learning program, our work with the Democratizer Data Challenge, which through the ADRF we were able to kind of port over George Putnam and Illinois' amazing work on the unemployment to reemployment portal and kind of put our data in very easily and start expanding on that. And we also started pulling in, we were bringing in unemployment insurance, QC.DU wages, the Rapids, bringing in the registered apprenticeship data set, and post-secondary mostly for measurable skills gains, crucial attainment, that types of things, mostly for the outcomes that were relevant to those programs. 2023, we started bringing in like SNAP, TANF, WIOA, other things with our expanded WDQI program, really just kind of laying the foundation for the E2E thing that we've already talked too much about, so we're not going to talk about that. We also, that's when we first started kind of bringing researchers in our state into ADRF. And we can talk a little bit more on a different question, but using it as an in-state secure research enclave. Our Chief Research Officer, Jake Walker, kind of started setting up a process, a governance stream around that. So it's, we don't just take the class and stop, so that we can continue to use the ADRF in production with our training community of practice. We've used it for a teacher pipeline study. We're starting to use it for economic impact analyses. This year we're working on adding criminal justice data, Medicaid for social determinants of health, and with our IAS LCDS program starting to bring in K-12 and CTE, and then next year we're working on early childhood foster care and juvenile justice, unless we get surprises, unless there's an executive order or something. But we'll talk more in the code modernization session, the way we kind of woven it in as a layer of our state data architecture.
Thank you. That's a lot of projects, for sure. So we're going to transition now to our federal partner. And one of the things that's most exciting to me personally about the ADRF is the participation of the federal government and in the ADRF facility. And the reason that's so important to me is because it signals to the field that this is an authorized way, not only an authorized way to go, it also signals their interest in us on the state level partnering with these kind of facilities, and that they have trust in the work that's being done there. So to me, that's a really important note for the folks from the Coleridge Center, is when you start to see those kinds of things, it kind of gives you those indicators. So when I get asked on the privacy side, well, I don't think we can do that because the federal government, there are a lot of federal government agencies that are currently participating in the ADRF, so what do you say about that, right, at that point? So I think that's really helpful, so I applaud the federal government for modeling this for the states going forward. So with that, of course, my thing went to, see, this is technology, isn't it, right? So could you talk a little bit about USDA's vision and benefits from the use of the ADRF data system? And then how would you like to see the ADRF system in the future used by states?
Thanks. Yeah, so I'm not sure what I'll be able to say about states, but let me say a little bit more about how we're using ADRF in my experience there. So first of all, just a little bit more about me. I've been with USDA for a little over 3 years, and I came from a university environment. I was at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I got involved in working with federal statistical system data through working in an RDC, or in the RDC system. I actually started working in the Chicago Federal Research Data Center, and then we started in Wisconsin and worked there. So I had some experience, working with the kinds of data that federal government builds and makes available to the public. Things got deeper and deeper, and eventually I just thought I'll just join the team and went to work for the federal government. And when I came to ERS, a colleague who had been there many years had informed me, made me aware of the relationship he had developed with Coleridge. His name is Mark Nambali. So everything that we're doing at USDA is really a tribute to the work that he did initially to kind of help the founders of Coleridge and the innovators there kind of build the capacity to provide enclave services, that can host CIPSIA-protected federal statistical system data. And I'm not an expert on those kind of legal and administrative issues. I know that they're extremely challenging, and my focus is really more on the research projects where I see opportunity working through a platform like ADRF. And we kind of have 3 buckets of kind of project types that we're working on right now. One type of project is actually not just using the platform, but using the staff at ADRF. We have a data modernization, several data modernization projects that are essentially porting legacy code to a more modern kind of development environment for producing our data product. We have, many thousand lines of SAS code that underlies some of our data product that we've been working with Coleridge to convert to R, and to develop in kind of a more narrative and well-documented kind of technique that we hope will be more amenable to collaboration and to input, actually, and contributions from university researchers. In fact, that was one of my initial and one of my kind of overarching ambitions working with Coleridge is to, and this kind of comes from my perspective, working with these kinds of data as a university researcher, is to provide more opportunity for there to be a kind of a virtuous feedback loop between the production of the data that happens in federal and states systems and researchers who use the data, who then can contribute back, with data quality improvements when they see opportunities to actually just correct or improve things in the data that they see, or to provide enhancements and value-added kind of, record linkages or maybe kind of, specific slices or analyses of the data product that could be useful to others. And not just be a wow for their specific research paper in a particular application. So data modernization and working with staff to convert legacy code, that's one thing that we're doing. Second thing we're doing is we're hosting data, our own produced data, but also proprietary data in some cases in project spaces where we're trying to build sort of data communities. So, rather than just provide some of our data to a researcher for use in their paper or research project, we have data that we're putting in ADRF that we're using ourselves, often in collaboration with external researchers and kind of working on the data. In some cases, it's proprietary data that we think we're making more valuable to to researchers interested in the food and agriculture space. By reformatting it, slicing it, improving it, connecting it, linking it to other data, and basically creating a new data product essentially on top of a proprietary data product, but in a space where there are lots of researchers, lots of projects, and where those researchers can interact with each other. So it's not just an isolated project space with the data, it's a collaborative project space where we're trying to expand possibilities for collaboration. And then the third kind of use case for ADRF is the more traditional case, which is just provisioning data for external users to use. So somebody wants to use our microdata, we need to have a secure space where they can use it, and where we can evaluate requests for disclosure of specific outputs, and we're not interacting or collaborating in any way on the research project, we're just provisioning the data, and ADRF is a space that is an institution, or Coleridge is an institution, and ADRF is a space where we can do that, and that technology is something we would have a hard time doing that in-house right now, I think. So I guess that's it for now. I'm not, in terms of the states, one thing I'll say about the states is that I'm not sure where this fits in our conversation, but I'll just bring it up. Is that we have to coming from the outside and being relatively new, I see lots of opportunities for collaboration with external partners like Coleridge. But I'm often, I fear sometimes that if I ask that we do something, that there's going to be questions about why can't we do that in-house? Why do we need to use an external collaborator? And and I'm not sure about exactly where the boundaries are in those kinds of collaborations, but one very interesting collaboration we have in the ag space is that we enumerate actually all of our surveys, our partner statistical agency, the National Ag Statistics Service, and ERS, use an organization called the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture, NASDA, as the organization that hires all of the enumerators who do our surveys. So this is including for the Census of Agriculture. The Census of Agriculture, the surveys that we do in our Ag Resource Management Survey, which is a large-scale survey of farmers, are actually enumerated by employees of the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture. So USDA has figured out a way to contract out entirely the enumeration of our, very important survey work that we do. And that's, I think, an example of a really beneficial partnership, having boots on the ground, literally, and people in the community who know the respondents in many cases that they're working with, and who really expand the possibilities, our capacity to do high quality field work, with our surveys. It's a really powerful partnership, and it's the kind of partnership I hope we can build with people who can help us with our data science and data hosting.
Thank you.
And if I could interject one quick kind of reinforcement on Brent's comments. You talked about the virtuous cycle and the data quality improvement, and that's not theoretical. We're seeing that in action with USDA data. So USDA put out the SNAP Golden Record layout. USDA provided resources to our state, kind of got in discussions with our privacy officers at Human Services to help them understand, how to safely and compliantly share and use that SNAP data. We've built it into a training program that about 25 states are participating in, and that is driving, they're finding data quality improvements that we're folding back into our operational systems. They're also suggesting improvements to the Golden Record layout and methodology changes that we're getting back over to the Census Bureau staff. So that is actually happening in practice, and I think that's something that we can scale in other domains.
Thank you so much. So one of the areas that frequently comes up is questions specifically around if you're considering utilizing the ADRF. I'd like the panel to kind of address what would you say to those potential ADRF customers who are getting some pushback internally. I heard you say it also, but I think there's a potential loss of control by partnering with them. This could add additional security, privacy, and transparency issues with our data. How would you individually respond to that? And I'd also like you to respond to this as well, but how would you respond to those states who are dealing with this? And what are some mitigation strategies that you might have as suggestions for those organizations that are considering moving to the ADRF but see a little bit of political headwind in doing that?
And I can start by saying, and they might not have that awareness, but those data are going out today anyway, particularly like most states, most departments. They've got a lot of external research partners and entities, and they're sending flat files out, and we're right across the hall from our Chief Information Security Officer and our Cybersecurity Office, and they think about surface area, and they really think about the weakest links. So we've got, very secure data center with lots of defense in depth, but then if we take that administrative data and we put it in a flat file and we send it off somewhere and that's the weakest link, then it's kind of all for naught. So moving it to somewhere that's FedRAMP moderate, this FedRAMP high, hopefully, eventually, we're not lowering the security posture of that data, and that's something our legislature really looked at with, we have a lot of copies of data, we have a lot of surface area, that's a lot more potential for breach, misuse, et cetera. So by moving from making a bunch of copies of data and sharing data itself as a copy to sharing access to a smaller surface area of data, we're actually increasing our security posture. Also, when we send these files out, we don't know, we lose our audit trail, we don't know what's done, we don't know if it's ever really destroyed. By using a secure research enclave and granting access to the data, we have a full audit trail, we know who's using it. If their staffing changes, we can remove them. And we've got, full control over the disclosure review process, which is something we've never had before. So I really look at it as an improvement in our security posture and a reduction in risk.
I'm going to do a quick follow-up to that. And then when you think about the staffing it would take, at the state level from a security perspective or just cloud architecture expertise, maybe I just asked the crowd here, how easy is it to hire a cloud engineer on state salaries? Raise your hand if it's fairly easy. No? Okay. So there's definitely a resource issue there, right? There's definitely that. And then the other thing that I'd follow up with is the movement of data, right? In a cloud environment, you can monitor every second of, every movement that happens, any action that's taken there. In my experience, working for PTAC, but then now in my new role, it's pretty uncommon to have that level of auditability at least in the current government standalone systems. They're starting to move that way, but it's really been, it's a heavy lift for state governments, which struggle with both staffing resources and being able to bring them in. And so this allows you to potentially mitigate some of those issues as you're looking at building out and expanding, especially if you start to reach across to those other agencies outside of the typical K-12 area.
So in terms of the security and risk and fear of what might happen with the data, I think that comes down to, we're confident that we have at least the security through our enclave relationship at Coleridge that we have on site. We wouldn't be doing it otherwise, and that's a technical question. That's something you can evaluate. With the right technical expertise, you can make a determination of what the risks are and various use cases, and make a determination. I think maybe a bigger issue, is the sort of lock-in aspect or the risk associated with having your work done somewhere else and not being able to replicate it and productionize it and use it, in-house over the long run. I think the real value that we provide as a federal statistical agency is having stability, right? That is to an extreme, right? Stability to an extreme. Over the long run, we're going to produce data series that have a well-documented methodology that are consistent across time. They may not, they're obviously, they can be critiqued along various dimensions, but stability is, I think, one of the claims we can make that makes us stand out relative to other sources of data. And we want to be able to, when we're producing it, in the case of the work that we're doing now with modernization, we want to make sure that the work that Coleridge is doing for us is work that we can bring in-house if needed. And that's something that we're being careful to do as the work proceeds, to kind of make sure that we can reproduce what the work that they're doing, that we have the tools that we need, and that we have the technical expertise in-house to reproduce that work. So that's just part of the workflow, I guess, that you need to pay attention to, and working with an external collaborator like that. I also, though, want to reiterate or emphasize the point you kind of alluded to, and it's not just a question of cost. I think I don't think, I may be wrong, but I don't think there's an actual data science series in the federal system for employment. If there is, we haven't been able to use it within ERS at USDA. We can go out and hire a data scientist. We can hire a statistician or an economist with a data science kind of specialization or something like that, I think. And I know that we've done that twice in the last year and a half. And I also know that both those very successful hires of people I was really excited about since have failed. People have left. And I didn't do the exit interviews. I don't know exactly why, but I think it has something to do with the peculiar state we're in the world of working with data science, where we have kind of a new crazy field called data science that isn't fit really well within our traditional social science and statistical disciplines. And it certainly isn't a space. It's not a place where we know to put people within our existing kind of organizational structures as statistical agencies. So it's not clear to me, and in my particular case, for example, whether a data scientist coming in should be over in our sort of we have kind of a research support, IT support division. that serves the entire agency. And then we have 3 research divisions that actually do the domain work. And it's not clear to me whether that a data science type person should be kind of in the support mode, providing, kind of collaborating kind of across lots of different project spaces, or whether they should be planted, sort of embedded right in the research projects themselves as collaborators, and that makes a big difference where you put those people, because they're under different supervisory structure and kind of they face different incentives and different reporting, demands. And so anyway, this is all just to say that it's great. I think it's the data science and data management, data analysis tooling, AI being the most recent manifestation of a very fast moving field that is not something we can respond to very well as a federal agency, kind of keeping up with the frontier in the technology and possibilities available, and the human capital kind of that's being developed out in private sector and in cutting edge academic units to bring those people into our stable systems and structures for producing our data is hard. But working with an external collaborator, I think we can be more nimble in that regard and use more cutting edge technology.
Yeah, I'll just say in 2008 or 2009, I was part of the Federal CIO Council. I was a very young guy on this council. I'm not any longer, but I had CIOs at the federal agency level question whether we should do a thing called data.gov, because they didn't understand the need for public to have access to that data. Not just, we use it all the time, but can you imagine not having NOAA or FAA data, or all the things that we enjoy now with all of the features that we have in almost every one of our apps on our phone is all based off of data.gov. So this is the next generation of that. The question is, what would be the thing to convince your leadership of why you need an ADRF? It's really, I hear you talk security, and that's near and dear to my heart. We absolutely need to secure data in a way. For a nonprofit to have your data, it's a great place to be. We'll never sell. We don't care about selling data. If you go public, you don't know what they mean by third parties when you sign. But the second thing is it's not just about security, it's about availability. And I had the esteemed gentleman, one of the gentlemen from Tennessee ask a question, okay, so why wouldn't I just buy? I think he was suggesting that he would build versus buy. And we're saying you buy it from us, I guess, even though we're a nonprofit, you're not really buying it, you're paying for a service. But it's because we're offering up in a very secure way data linkages to maybe federal data, because as we bring federal agencies on, and there is a lot of interest in federal agencies, we'll be able to kind of do a data.gov part 2, but it'll be private for researchers, so that'll give you access to way better data. And imagine having a year from now, I'm hoping we sit here and talk about how the states are now using the code between each of the enclaves and sharing that data in a marketplace, which is what we want to do with ADRF. Allow you to take code from Tennessee and see it in California. Not the data necessarily, but the code, the stuff that you're doing, the researchers need to be able to do. There's some really good developers out there that maybe in one state that the other state doesn't have, but they still would benefit. And that evangelizes that community. And that's why I think the ADRF, it's more of a community than it is just about a product or service. So.
And I'm going to just go ahead and follow up on something you brought up. It's not in the script, but I think you all can speak to this. Let's talk about the value of the ability to partner with other agencies, like other states, some of that work. This is the multi-state collaboratives, right? But, you build yourself. How's that going to work, right? There may not be that opportunity. I don't think there are those opportunities. So, and I think even at the federal level with the Evidence Act, right, there's the opportunity to use the ADRF for some of that cross-federal agency sharing. Can you talk a little bit about those advantages and kind of the vision or opportunities that you've seen by using this facility to do that work?
Yes, and I'll start by reinforcing Richard's comment, and we build and buy. So we have both options, and even though we can build and do build, we still find plenty of value. We run, we have an on-prem infrastructure. We can give our data scientists access to run notebooks on terabytes of RAM. We can do a lot of things, and it costs a lot, and it requires a lot of care and feeding, and it is distracting at times, and it's kind of a non-value added activity to get to what we really want to do. So we see a lot of value just kind of comparing the cost. It is much more cost effective and efficient for us to use the ADRF for where we use the ADRF. And then the time savings of the help with disclosure review and the agility in provisioning project spaces and all of the additional new tools that are kind of wrapping around that. The first time that I was in a class and they did, the primary and secondary like disclosure review, I was just, how did you do that so fast? Because that's something we don't like normally do, and they've really developed a process and they continue to mature that. But even if we, there's things that we could do ourselves, but it's more efficient to do them in ADRF. But then there are other things that we cannot do ourselves, and that's where the multi-state part comes in. It's hard enough sharing data within a state, but if we start trying to convince all the other states to send data between each other and host it locally, and that's probably not going to happen. So, the fact that we've proven it out so many times here, this is the only game in town for multi-state data sharing. And then I think that not only sets the stage for that coverage I talked about the other day, that like even if we have the best possible systems in our states, we've got coverage gaps and we're blind to certain things, and we've got a lot of unknown unknowns, so it helps with the coverage. But then it sets up for scalable data use, which is very, very powerful because we don't need to do 50 plus versions of the same thing. And we're, like I say, we've only been on this particular leg of this journey for a few years, and we've been able to move very, very fast. And we would not have done it by just staying in Arkansas and trying to figure it all out ourselves. The community of practice, leveraging things that other states have done, learning from the models, like that's been a key enabler for our agility and our efficiency, and just, we don't want to do anything that's already been done.
You mentioned the Evidence Act, and yeah, that was so. I have this kind of a little bit of a split personality because I have the before coming to the federal statistical system or federal government employment, and the after versions of me. And the before version was the Evidence Act. Let's put all this data in one enclave or one location and link and. I see there's lots of opportunity to do research with data that might be linked across various federal statistical system partners. Coming to federal employment and seeing how hard that is actually even within a single department. So USDA is unique in having two, not just one, but two principal statistical agencies inside a single department. And even within our department, we have difficulty sharing data across that boundary. And NAS, our partner agency in the USDA, does have their data at Coleridge as well. So. But even then, there's frictions that we face in terms of trying to link up our data that we collect. Actually, they collect for us. We receive it from them and host it ourselves and send it to Coleridge ourselves. There's some of those data that we would like to link and use more with their data and with administrative, program agencies within USDA. There's a lot of program agency data in ag and food-related programs that we would like to link to with our survey data, and so the after coming to federal employment version of me and thinking about the Evidence Act is, there's incredible opportunity there, but also real barriers still to overcome in terms of achieving what clearly was the ambition of the act, to expand possibilities for linking data across program and statistical agencies. That said, I view every project that we have at ADRF as an opportunity to demonstrate, what's possible, to do proof of concept, to provide high value product and show what's possible, and hopefully over time things will open up and we'll be able to do more.
So one of the last questions that I want to ask is really around some of the technological advantage. We kind of touched on some of them, but I want to make sure we cover all that are there. And if you have some that we haven't talked about, Richard, you might want to talk about some of those. But also, as you're thinking about this, start to formulate what the resource lift would be had you done this, we'll call it in-house, right? Within your state resources. Like, what would that resource and skill lift look like to be able to do some of the things you've done with the Coleridge Center, just to kind of set in reality? Because it's really easy. Look, I even have this as my other job, the technology officer for a large research company, where I have to justify these outsourced costs. I'm like, well, I'm happy to not outsource this, but it's going to cost you $1.4 million if we don't do this. I know you're balking at $750,000 or $800,000, but you asked me to do something that's very expensive. And in order to do that, we can either hire staff, train them, get the environment set up, pay all those fees, right? Get the licenses. Oh, and then we actually have to do the work and find the skill set to do that, right? And nonprofits, same thing, to some extent as government. I'm not going to have the highest salaries. We're competing with .com, with the whole Silicon Valley, Google, especially where we're based. So what are some of those? Have you thought about what those costs would be, or did you have to use that as part of, well, I know you didn't have to, but did you have to use that as part of your justification to move there? Was that even a discussion, or were there just open minds in Arkansas and to go do it? So you can start with the resource piece. I'm just curious how the process and how that journey went for you as you were exploring this.
I mean, it helps that, so FedRAMP alone would be a couple of $1 million to get to FedRAMP moderate. To operate it basically that whole crew that's at the front desk. I mean, you see how many people are here from college just running the thing. We have precious few like FTE positions, and we want to use them as much as possible to deliver value to our residents, employers, and communities, and like cut out as much of, well, first the 85% of non-value added time and doing analytics work and cleaning and prepping and all that, but also then the other time just hosting and preparing environments. We definitely don't want to be using our precious FTEs on that. So we don't have an unlimited number of resources, and it's really just kind of deciding what is the most efficient use of our resources to have the most effective impact on those we serve. And there's no way that we could do what is in the ADRF, for even a tenth of the cost for us.
I can't speak to the cost. I'm not sure what the cost comparison was. I do think we have the capability. Our in-house IT at USD, I think, does have something stood up, which is something like an enclave type capability for internal researchers. But the big critical thing, I think, or one of the critical things that Coleridge provides is the credentialing. It's not just the internal researchers that we want to work with. We really want to work with external collaborators. We want to make our data available to researchers, and we also want to have, we use a lot of cooperative agreements at ERS to do research projects with external collaborators, and we want to be able to let them access our data without having to furnish equipment and onboard them as when whatever status is required to be, in-house, I guess, as an external collaborator working on our equipment. So that credentialing aspect is really important.
Maybe I'll frame the question a little bit different for you, Richard. Do you ever, when you're working with states, and maybe you might have to ask one of your members out there, sorry to put you on the spot, but is like a ROI or like kind of the value, if states are struggling with that piece, is that something that you have readily available to help with for justifying ADRF versus an in-house build? Is that something that's been thought about, or potentially in the future, if not?
Yeah, I think it depends on who in the organization you're talking to. If you're talking to the CIO or CISO, they immediately see the cost savings, because we're not just offering a service that's data linkages, and we're also offering compliance, which is what Robert was speaking about. So the ROI, it's also like you really look at the three constraints, the triple constraint of quality, cost, and time. the time to build an ADRF that's compliant to the federal standards would take an internal organization or a state organization an awful lot, I think. Yeah, it would take a long time. And then not only that, that's a moving target. So we just came out with this Rev 5, Revision 5 of the FedRAMP, which has got my entire team working for the next 2 months on this. It's a lot of writing. It's everything about supply chain now, from things that may be sourced from outside the United States, all the stuff that you didn't expect that we have to go do research on. So the time is ridiculous, and the level of time it would take to get there. The cost is also very expensive. That's a moving target as well. The cloud providers used to be getting cheaper. Now they're actually getting more expensive. I don't know why, but it seems like the costs are going up pretty significantly. So that cost alone is hard. And then quality. We're talking about not just to be able to access quality like availability, but also in the data linkages. And we're really working to strive. We're already set up. We're working on the next maturity level, which is what data can we provide safely, elected data. You know, I talked earlier about using GitLab and some other things inside the ADRF, these tools that are vertical in each enclave that give people the availability to do things outside. So that triple constraint is what the ROI, that's what, as a CTO or CIO, I'd be looking at, wow, how can I hit all three of those without mucking it up? And then what if I lose people, you know, in the middle of the project? So that's, if you're talking to a practitioner, I think they just want to see a user environment that makes sense, that's not complicated, that's accessible. And I think that would be an ROI, like on them. Like what does it mean to you as a researcher to be able to access something from home that you might not be able to do from the state because there's some bureaucratic nature where you can't, you know, and things like that. So there's a lot of things to that question, but that's kind of what I would think about. Yeah.
Were you going to add something? Yeah, that looked like you.
Nothing.
So I want to see if there's questions from the audience. Oh, and we have an addition. Would you like to?
Yeah. So I know everybody talked about the tech side of the world. Well, I'm a researcher and I work in these environments. When I look at from outside as a researcher, I also see the ADRF as a center of collaboration for the researchers, right? It is a hub for a research community at the same time. But there is a compliance side of it, right? How are we going to bring the researchers together in the workspaces? What is the vision on there for the future? I guess this question goes to Rich.
Excuse me, ma'am, can you announce who you are? She's my boss. I feel like this interview question, maybe.
I also want to hear from you that, right, how do you see the ADRF from a research perspective, from a research innovation perspective, how we create the products together?
I have the answer to this. With people like Nate in the back there, the guy, the nice dressed guy in the back in blue hair, it's not just, you guys, Coleridge is not just a platform. We're doing training and classes and democratizing data challenges and things, poster challenges. I mean, we're doing things that normally just a company wouldn't do. We're like, hey, let me just sell you this product. We're like trying to build this community, this, as you say, is a hub where people are collaborating. That's what drew me to Coleridge. It's a nonprofit. I love the nonprofit space. There's energy, there's a commitment. Again, I was in the elevator, can't explain what we do, but everybody in here understands. You know, it's kind of nice. That where we can do that with the researchers. When I see researchers getting excited on a call between USDA, ERS, you know, I'm on a call with them I think once a week, and they're excited about what they're finding, and that's not, you don't see that on a call with Google or AWS, you know. So there's a community here of hub of research. So I commend you guys for being here, coming here. It's a commitment and being part of this. I'm glad you guys are adding to the community, and I'm glad to be the platform you're doing it on. And just stay with us because we're building cool things in the future. And I think this time next year, hopefully double. No, you can get this chance. You got. We were a lot bigger than we were, I think, last year. We're going to continue to grow. It just shows you it's a community, and it's great. So, okay, did I do okay, boss? Okay.
Well, and I guess for us, it makes it faster to bring researchers in because we're not starting from scratch. I guess a recent example, we're supporting Medicaid with social determinants of health measures. And so all we need to really bring in is the cohort. So that because most of the social determinants of health that they care about are already there. So as the deltas get smaller, we can facilitate the research much faster. And as we're spending less time facilitating the research process, that lets us bring more researchers in the environment. And over time, we've brought a lot of we have Office of Innovation for Education here with us. We're great partners. We have Office of Education Policy. We're bringing Arkansas Economic Development Institute. We're making over time bringing lots of different state research partners in. Working Heartland Forward, who's actually they're in Arkansas, but they support a lot of different states. Getting them trained, getting them to where they can work quickly in the environment, and we can leverage that capacity to very quickly stand up a project space and get them in, get past the non-value added stuff. And once they kind of learn it because we're using standard layouts and things like that, hopefully they can get to their research faster, and as they do more projects, they know their way around, and so we can speed up that continuous cycle of research driven down to policy and practice.
What's funny is you actually stole a spare question I had, but it was great. It was almost like I planted it with you, so thank you for doing that.
This wasn't the plan.
No, it wasn't. It totally wasn't planned. She wasn't at dinner last night, so. Do you have any examples of some of the research collaborations at the federal ADRF?
Yeah, I'll give one example. So I came out of working with the Census Bureau data. I was working with was the longitudinal business data. This is the kind of the backbone data product that Census Bureau makes available to researchers who want to study business dynamics with microdata. It's the full universe of firms in the United States going back to the 1970s annually. And it's complicated. It's a complicated data product to work with. It's not super well documented inside the RDC system. And for those who weren't initiated in the data through tutoring and mentorship by somebody who had experience working with it, it's not for the faint of heart to just jump in and start working with it, which was my case. And one of my big frustrations at the time was they put me in a project workspace, they gave me the data, and I was on my own. There was no other researchers in that project workspace. I couldn't get any code from anybody else. I couldn't see how others were using the data, and it was just really painful. And then that's apart from just being able to build on somebody else's code to replicate their research results and maybe extend them in some way, and it was just it really strange to me, thinking trying to understand why we were all being sent snapshots of the data product and partitioned, siloed in individual research workspaces with the data. As researchers, there's hundreds of people using that one data product. I still don't know exactly why they are doing it that way in the RDC. I do know that we are trying an ADRF, and one little project we have using proprietary data that's something analogous to the LBD, not nearly as rich, but still it's called NETS National Employment Time Series. We have a project workspace set up where we have basically anybody who's using those data or wants to use those data goes into that one project workspace, and there's a common folder that people have private folders for doing their research, but there's also a public space where they can share their code and data slices if they want with others who are using that project workspace. So, it's an attempt to when we're all working with the same data, we all have the same data use permissions, and we're in a space where you can't disclose or export data. Why isn't everybody? I mean, they should be able to have private research folders. They don't want, maybe I can understand why researchers wouldn't want other researchers poking around in their half-finished research projects. But if they want, once they've completed some aspect of the research that they think might be valuable and useful to others, or if somebody wants to try to replicate something that was done, they should be able to export to a folder where others can go in and use that data. Again, not disclose anything until it's gone through disclosure review, but be able to work with others' code and data. Seems simple. Nate over there in the nice outfit, turns out we've been working on setting up that workspace and working through a lot of details that you wouldn't imagine you would face with such a simple conceptual, ambition. But I think we've had some lot of success, excited to hopefully have much more in years to come.
I would point out that Nate, next time he puts that jacket on, he's going to go, it looks good, I think.
So one of the things I want to wrap up with, and then we still have some time for questions here, is the ADRF, the Coleridge folks, they're always trying to innovate, and that doesn't just include the side of like the technological pieces and those pieces. It's also even to participate. So I do want to share that we're actively partnering, our attorneys from the Data Integration Support Center are partnering with the Coleridge Center to simplify the MOU process, right? And to develop faster ways for you to be able to participate, especially as you are working between states. We know that that's a very complicated matter. And so what's also great about the Coleridge Center is we've got a whole network of partners that we work with to help you with your participation, you know, from whether it be the data quality campaign, the Massive Data Institute. I see Amy back there, hello. We're very non-turfy when it comes to this and really want to help you be successful. And I think that's something you're not going to just find from a vendor, right? If you're working with a partnership network, look at what you have here too. You have your ability to work with other states and the ability to share code, to share research ideas, to share new ways of doing work. So this is really a great opportunity for states to be able to participate. So with that, do we have any questions for any of the members of the panel?
While we wait, we're talking about what next with ADRF, and we're going right to the individual, de-identify at a individual level, the stuff HIPAA, FERPA, CGIS, the hard stuff to share. There's a lot of value with data that's easier to share, and we even internally in our state started doing a lot of work just making it easier to consume publicly available open data sets, which a lot of times the way they're made available is not super intuitive and consumable. So I think some of the what's next with ADRF can be like further extending that. I mean, there's already module 1, it really teaches people to make good intuitive use of the LEHD data. I think as we're working on, over this year, we're bringing in like the jobs data from the National Labor Exchange Research Hub, the ability to kind of start putting out code to look at labor market demand and how that's changing. That we've been talking about like what's changing with AI and things like that and emerging industries. That will really help to supplement what we already have with our administrative data as we're kind of building out additional linked open data on credentials and things like that through efforts like Credential Engine. I think some of that's easy to start and share with can get a lot of value even if we don't quite have permission to share the de-identified individual level data that has a lot of compliance over it. So there's some other kind of early on-ramps that can provide a whole lot of value and kind of help with the culture change. Or for those that can share and link administrative data, that's going to kind of really take it to the next level.
Any questions? Did we cover this topic well? We have a question there.
Yeah, so something about, the sharing of codes, and I guess the other side of it is like, is there like, some kind of like standards, like, in an academic you could cite, but in terms of the codes, it's really like difficult. Like, if I use like someone's code, then could I just use it, like, in my analysis, or should I, like, mention or cite, or like, how does it kind of like work? Like, not with a common code, but with something, for example, that someone has developed that is unique and like, so.
So right now they do code sharing amongst interstate, some interstates, sir, but we're envisioning what this will look like in the future. So I talked to the team here earlier. We want to, again, this is new. We're going to put, if you can think of the ADRF or enclaves, we want to put an enclave above the enclave that allows you to elect code for production to the top or election to the top. And in there will be absolutely some standards, like who are you? Because we want to evangelize you. There are going to be some people, there are a lot of PhDs who want to show what they've been able to do. And there's some really beautiful written code already. But you're going to have to put in, like, what does it do? What's the inputs, outputs, and how do you run it? And then your phone number, because, they'll call us and we'll be like, hey. And we do have concierge. We have John Mills is in the room and others, PhD level, very good at this, and Roy and Chip and these guys that can help with the code. But we want them to be able to evangelize and share that code. That also portends that whoever's producing that code, it's almost like writing in a journal. Are you writing it so somebody will read it, or you don't want anyone to read it? So I would never share out some of my code. I write code all the time. But if I knew somebody might, if I'm going to elect it, I'm going to probably take some time and remove comments and, do some stuff to it. So your point is exactly right. There's got to be a standard for it. So great question.
Okay. I'll respond briefly to that as well. Not to steal thunder for the next session, because I think maybe we'll talk more about this in the next panel session that I'll be in. But code sharing happens. I think there's a whole lot that we can borrow from the software engineering world. There's just an amazing phenomena. If when you really look at it, it is amazing. This open source software community. The level of collaboration and code sharing is astonishing. Really, if you'd gone back 30 years and imagined if this could be possible, that we could achieve this kind of high quality software through an open source model, I'm not sure, it would be hard to make the case. I think that we just see what we have today. And that's done in part through licensing. There's a whole ecosystem of software licensing, so open source licensing, depending on how you want to share your code. I think in the context of the kind of research and data product development we do, it might make more sense to have something like a DOI that is attached to code that achieves something significant, whether it's an analysis or processing step or the actual creation of a data product in a certain year or timestamp. Or some other innovation, but that would be a way to acknowledge, the contribution, and then also to provide incentives, to make those contributions something analogous to publication of a journal article, and that would, I think, help, sort of ignite this kind of virtuous cycle idea that we have talked about a little bit.
And I just wanted to share that this last week we had one of the final project presentations, and it was the first time during the literature review that one of the cited pieces of literature was the final project presentation from another ADA program. And that was really exciting because there's so much good stuff out there. And I think previously an ADA program kind of using IRIS metrics to look at like the sites and things like that for traditional academic publications. I think it might be a little bit meta, but maybe we can kind of look at that to start indexing all of the wonderful code and research and methods that are, have previously been developed in the ADRF.
Okay, we got a question.
Yes. I'm very excited to hear about all of these opportunities for collaboration, the security, other things, and sitting where I am with a lot of other state executive leaders, I guess, what sort of engagement would you suggest, or have you been successful with either talking with like NASCIO, right, the National Association of State CIOs, of any other associations like the Chief Security Officers, right, or even NASPO, or National Association of State Procurement Officers? Because again, I mean, states are all looking for a way to bring in this sort of technology, innovation, opportunity to actually get to some of these results, right? Robert, you've shared a lot of good examples of that. But oftentimes, I mean, so I'm talking like, so you need to make sure your technology people are on board, and we have a member of two from our state's technology team here. You have to convince the funders, like our appropriators, right, which is always an ongoing conversation. You have to make sure that the security people feel confident, right, that we're using a tool that would allow for that. And we often have to engage in a competitive procurement process, right? So, I mean, I kind of named the 3 national associations that I'm kind of familiar with there, but I wonder, in your individual roles or as with Coleridge, how do you talk to those communities? Because oftentimes it's not like, hey, I wish I could make all the decisions, be like, okay, I've got it in my budget, I'm gonna get it, right? but I have to engage all these other decision makers who have to weigh in and sign off. So any sort of suggestion or advice you might be able to give us would
Yeah,
be helpful.
I'd like to take that. So being federated with all the states, federal government, all the agencies, all their own little enclaves. Great question. How do we get building our brand and let people know the best way? And this is my boss's kind of vision is to build a group of evangelists within this room and help that word get. The grassroots is the only way you beat federation. I could try to buy it through marketing, and we do have a plan to help with that, but we're a nonprofit, so there's obviously a limit to the amount of spend we would have on marketing. But as we move through the community and you guys are going around talking, and we get invited to the National CIOs Conference, and I absolutely would be there to kind of talk about this because we're excited, and I think that's a unique thing. So, and we're also new. We're a startup. We're a startup nonprofit. That's a very unique space in the world. As we grow, we have passion and interest and community, and we have a great product. I think we can beat people on pricing. I think we can beat people on security. We've got a community that's building. I think we can beat them there. So we just need a chance to talk to them. So if you have a group, and I talked to the great state of Wyoming to go to their conference, I'll go to there. I live out west, so if you got anything on the West Coast, I'll come talk, and I love to talk, so this is great. So, okay.
And we have, our state procurement is probably very similar to yours, and the kind of the natural path is put it out for, RFP or procure. But there's, as you learn more and talk to the procurement people, there's so many other pathways. And so, for the ADRF, we do sole source. There are a number of different exemptions, and particularly one of them is for it's the only game in town. And so I think. I hate non-value-added time. I hate duplicating things. In that case, I had to write all that stuff up and the governor's solicitation review memos and all that. So, but it's probably pretty similar from state to state. So if we want to also help share that language on the procurement side, that's another way that we don't have to do the same thing 50 plus times.
Okay, well, this was a great discussion. Thank you for the questions. Almost every one of us has a session in the next round, so stop by any of those. Bravo, mine. So thank you so much. I think we're going to go to the breakouts at this point. So have a good day, and we'll meet back here later. Thanks.